Imagine the generic GMT design session. A basement meeting room with no windows, one flickering fluorescent tube dying overhead. The walls are covered in blue tack from years of sticking images of every Rolex model to the wall for inspo. Everyone sits around an old office desk, clutching branded mugs that say disruptor and innovator. Okay, people, says the marketing lead, rifling through PowerPoint slides from 2015. What sells? Ceramic bezels, someone says with dead eyes. Brushed cases, someone else chimes in. Sunburst dials, Oyster-style bracelets, Pepsi colours and heritage. They all nod, trying to remember which Swiss brand they are homaging this time. Meanwhile, at the end of the desk, there's one guy. Dishevelled, pale, slight tremor in his hands from too much coffee. A man who's lost most of his illusions, but not quite all of his principles. He sighs, or we could make a watch that doesn't look like everyone else's. Silence. He's obviously fired on the spot, but that's the spirit behind VanBanner's Adroit GMT. It's not edgy for the sake of being edgy. It's the watch version of that one stubborn bastard in the trench who refuses to write home and say it's all going well. Because it's not going well. And it doesn't have to pretend. A few weeks back, I did a roundup of affordable GMTs and slipped in the Adroit. I even admitted it was the one I'd been chasing, but since VanBanner only shipped to Canada and the US, actually getting one was basically a pipe dream. Which stung even more because, for under £220, for the value on offer and the extra effort that went into making something genuinely interesting, made its unavailability feel like a punch to the gut. Then LV from VanBanner dropped me a message. He thanked me for including the watch and said he wanted to send me one. No strings attached, no demands for a review, just a gift. Naturally, I said yes, because let's be honest, I'd be mad not to. But here's the better news. Since it arrived, LV let me know that VanBanner are now shipping to the UK again, which means that distant fantasy for any other British GMT-obsessed masochist is suddenly a very real possibility. So enough waffling, let's actually look at the damn thing. First impressions? It doesn't look like anything else. Seriously, no lazy homage, no half-baked tribute act. Just its own stubborn thing. It is seriously like the guys at VanBanner said, if it's been done before, we're not doing it. Brushed stainless steel? Nah. Bead-blasted with intricate polished chamfers because they can. Ceramic bezel? Nope. Go with brushed steel. A sunburst dial with applied indices? How about a textured sandwich stencil dial? A chunky crown? Not a chance. It's having some sort of onion crown that's been cut off at the top. Polished hands? Nah. Brushed hands. It has to have an Oyster-style brush bracelet though, surely. Best I can do is completely custom bead-blasted and polished multi-link bracelet with butterfly clasp. An absolute mess on paper, but in the real world, easily one of my favourite looking watches this side of 15 grand. And no, I'm not even joking. The rest of the specs? A 40mm case, 46mm lug-to-lug and 13mm thick, comfortably chunky. Inside ticks the Seiko NH34 GMT movement. You get flat sapphire crystal with AR coating, a display case back to admire the VanBanner branding on the rotor, and 100 metres of water resistance for your daring sink adventures. Some people turn their nose up at bead-blasted steel, which is fair enough. It has a bad habit of making stainless steel look like a cheap aluminium TV stand from Argos circa 2003. The sort of finish that screams student flat chic. So instead of pretending you wouldn't notice, VanBanner went the other way entirely. They carved thick, gleaming polished chamfers into each lug like they were cutting diamonds. The result is a deliberate, almost confrontational contrast. The matte, no-nonsense bead blasting against those mirror-bright edges. Utility meets vanity, rough and smooth. It's a study in contrast that actually works, adding depth, intrigue, and a reassuring sense that yes, they knew exactly what they were doing. At 40mm across, 46.5mm lug-to-lug and 30mm thick, it's no shrinking violet. On paper, it's chunky. But it wears those dimensions with surprising grace. On the wrist, it feels smaller, almost deceitfully so. If you'd hidden the specs from me, I'd swear loudly and repeatedly that it was a 38mm watch. And given that anything looks smaller on my wrist, it's borderline miraculous, and I have to give them credit. But remember when I said they did everything differently? Well, I lied. Sort of. Because slapped on the side is a big engraved VanBanner logo that sticks out like an Invicta-sized sore thumb. Not my choice personally, but they've committed to it. Some will love it. For me, I'll get over it. It's not a deal breaker. Cleverly, VanBanner went with the normal finish on the bezel, brushed stainless steel. It adds another texture to the mix, but more importantly, if you're anything like me and manage to scrape your brand new watch down a brick wall within 30 minutes, it makes scuffs and scratches far easier to deal with. Much better than if they'd gone for the bead-blasted treatment and turned every ding into a permanent monument to your clumsiness. The bezel has 48 deliberate tactile clicks in both directions, tighter than most GMT bezels, but at least it stays exactly where you set it. And credit where it's due, someone on their team remembered half-hour time zones actually exist. You know, for the tiny subset of people who use GMT functions for real travel instead of just setting it to GMT because they think it sounds adventurous. As for the bezel numerals, they're filled with red and black Japanese lume. Not the brightest stuff you'll ever see, but bright enough to do the job. And let's be honest, if you need a GMT bezel to glow like a torch at 3 AM, you're probably in a war zone and worried the lume will give away your position. Even the crown didn't escape the designer's meddling. Instead of the usual oversized dive crown that looks like it could double as a plumbing fitting, they went for a refined half-onion shape. Easy to grip with frozen fingers in the cold, yet low profile enough not to carve a trench into your wrist when you're lying face down in the dirt, contemplating life choices, or dodging yet another pointless meeting. And they loomed the logo with black Japanese lume. Not for cheap showboating, but for that one private moment in the dark when it flickers back at you. A small, conspiratorial, slightly sinister nod that rewards anyone paying close enough attention to notice. Yes, the crown is push-pull. I hear you. Push-pull on a watch that looks like it's ready to dive? Sacrilege. But here's the thing. It's not actually a dive watch. The Rolex Explorer 2 shares some dive-like traits too. Sure, it's got a screw-down crown, but with 100 metres water resistance, this Adroit matches it with push-pull. Would I prefer a screw-down crown? Of course. Is it necessary? Certainly not. The dial, sand textured gradient with a sandwich construction. Cut-out indices reveal C3 superluminova beneath the buried ordnance that still glows after dark. It's not just designed to look good under perfect lighting, it feels genuine. Grainy, weather-beaten on purpose, like it's been places you probably shouldn't. This isn't a dial that you casually glance at, you study it, half expecting its hidden secrets you'd rather not uncover. The date window follows suit, discreetly tucked between the 3 and 4 o'clock markers, barely noticeable when you don't need it, but quietly ready when you do. The hour and minute hands feature a brushed finish, subtle, restrained, and perfectly suited to the dial's tone. Against the blue backdrop, they stay legible without demanding a spotlight. The red seconds hand offers a sharp contrast, slicing across the dial with just enough punch to catch your eye without overdoing it. The GMT hand sports a thick arrowhead designed for absolute clarity. Even when overlapped by the others, it remains unmistakable, no guesswork involved. The lume is not the sterile, surgical glow of perfect backlighting. It seeps through those layered cutouts with a hazy, uneven wash, ghostly, like the eerie glow you'd see through a gas mask lens at 2 AM. It's not there to be pretty, it's there to unsettle you just enough to pay attention. Other brands just raid the catalogue of uninspired Oyster clones and call it a day. VanBanner said, no thanks. They designed their own bracelet, multi-link bead-blasted to match the case, with polished centre links to keep it from looking like a pure tool watch, or a discarded piece of industrial hardware. It tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to 18mm at the butterfly clasp, which includes 2 1.5 micro-adjust links for actual adjustment. Imagine that. Now, the butterfly clasp might put people off. I managed to get a perfect fit with it, but your mileage may vary. And multi-link bracelets have their downsides. Lower tolerances mean that hair pulling and that familiar jangle that can make even expensive watches feel cheaper than they should. Even pieces 10 times the price aren't immune. And yes, this one does have that signature jangle, but hair pulling? Haven't had it happen. I'll take that as a minor victory. Would I prefer a standard clasp? Absolutely. But the watch is such a strap monster that if the bracelet isn't for you, the quick release pins and drilled lugs make swapping it out about as easy as it gets. So who's it for? It's not for the guy that wants to show off. It's not for the guy who wants to trick people into thinking it's something else. It's not for collectors who need polishing so fine you can see their soul screaming back at you. And it's not for someone who wants a marketing story about crossing oceans that they'll never swim or racing cars they'll never afford. It's for someone who actually wears their watch, who notices the details, who appreciates that every decision was deliberate. They want something that works, that was designed with care, that has enough darkness to be interesting, something that, if you dropped in the mud and wiped with your trousers, would just look better for the trouble. It's not perfect, it's not trying to be, it's trying to be right. This isn't the watch for anyone who wants safe bets and off-the-shelf homage designs. It's for people who prefer their choices with a bit of defiance baked in. It's bead-blasted, a bit kooky, and sports a crown that's half an onion purely out of spite. On paper, utter chaos. On the wrist, weirdly convincing. If you want something polished, predictable, and universally approved, look elsewhere. If you want something with actual personality, you found it. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.